Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. It's called Apache Spark plus OpenAI for personalized banking services. Akmal is the speaker for today's webinar, and I am Yukti. I will be your host for today's webinar. So, one of my main jobs here at SingleStore is to organize these weekly AI webinars. So, this is one of the last webinars that we are scheduling. The next webinar will be actually rescheduled. So, stay tuned for that. Like we had one originally scheduled for 20th, so that would be rescheduled if you were planning to attend that one. Like you'll get that email very soon. So thanks everyone for joining. Just give me a second. I'll toggle on live streaming and we'll be good to go. If you have any feedback regarding these sessions, if you have any ideas, if you want to share about any projects that you're working on, if you want to see a webinar on a particular topic that you might be working on, it resonates with you. So feel free to DM me on LinkedIn and we can actually chat about it there. And you might see a auto register button on our website when you visit our events page. So stay tuned for that. I actually see that someone has raised their hand. Mr. Nilesh, I want to let you all know that you are in a listen only mode currently, and um, you will be able to ask any questions using the Zoom Q&A button, which is present at the bottom of your console. So you can ask any question, like no matter what it is. We will make sure to answer all of your questions either during the session, or we will also have a dedicated Q&A session that is going to happen by the like towards the end of the session. So stay tuned for that. Just feel free to add in any question. Uh, Share your LinkedIn ID. You can just type in my name and I mean Yukti single store. You might see my ID there. So yeah. Uh, all right, so introducing today's speaker, we have Akmal, who is a technical evangelist here at SingleStore and is also a very regular speaker at our webinars. So he has extensive experience and has been in the database space for a long time. So you can actually ask him anything that you have the doubt for, and he is going to be there to assist you. So all right, please take it away, Akmal, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Great. Well, thank you, Yukti, and thank you all very much. I appreciate. I mean, I was just looking at my phone here, and I just realized it's 18th December. Okay, so by now, probably you're looking forward to the break over the festive period. And this page here is a little bit unusual because typically we have a variety of boxes that will tell you what's coming up next. So as Yukti mentioned, there was something scheduled for this Friday, but we thought, well, people are probably going to be enjoying themselves and no one will want to attend the webinar. So I think that will be rescheduled for the new year, unless you're desperate, okay? You really want us to do it, in which case let us know. But I think the plan is to cancel that. And so a little bit of information here. So you're encouraged to sign up and please use singlestore.com/cloud-trial. For the past couple of webinars that I've done, it's been possible for people to sign up and then load the notebook and then kind of follow along. Today, because I'm using a bit of OpenAI, it requires a subscription in order to use their API key. So my suggestion is that, yes, Yukti will share the resources with you, and you're welcome to load the notebook into the environment. If you have access to OpenAI and you have a paid subscription, I mean, it's not going to cost hardly anything, okay? Pennies. Even so, you do need to have that. And what I will do is over the festive period, I'll try and rewrite the notebook to see if it's possible to just to use open source technologies. Okay, although the title of the webinar does mention OpenAI, so we have to kind of stick to that. I'd strongly recommend, please do create an account. Okay, that will be valuable for you later on. Okay, so this is the link here, as you can see. Okay, it's singlestore.com/cloud-trial. cloud hyphen.
Akmal, can I please interject? Just give me a second. Actually, I forgot to mention that I will be sharing the resources in the chat for everyone. So, if there's like, it will include Akmal's GitHub notebook and the link to try single store, so you can have a hands-on session. So, stay tuned for that. I'll be doing it shortly. Sorry, Akmal, you can
No,
continue.
no, that's okay. All right, great. Thank you for that. Okay, so you're encouraged to sign up. It's a very simple process. So once you get to this page, either use Google or Microsoft, or as I always say, just do the old-fashioned way, first name, last name, email address, and then just click continue. Okay, it'll ask you a few questions, send you an email, just verify you are human. And then once you've done that, you can log into the portal, okay, which will look a little bit like this. Okay, so let me just go to home. Actually, let's see if we can't make this a little bit bigger. Zoom in, okay? So make that a bit tad bigger. There we go. Okay, so as you log into the portal, that will be portal.singlestore.com. You will see something like this. There'll be a welcome message, okay? There'll be a mention to your organization over here, okay? And then just the two things that you need to be aware of is on the left-hand side, you can see here deployments and data studio, okay? That's all you need. There's lots of other great stuff here, but we don't have time to cover that today, unfortunately. So under deployments here, if I just click this, you will see that, let me just select this here. There will be a starter free shared tier, okay, for you. So you'll get a workspace and a database already created for you, right? Now that's great. Now, for this particular notebook that I'm going to run, it requires the standard workspace, which is easy to do. Okay, all you need to do, just at the top here, okay, you can see this kind of little pull down here. If I just highlight this with a couple of arrows, okay, if you select this, you can see that you have the option here for something called new deployment, right? And if I just click this, okay, let me just show you, and it will take you to this. So there is only one free starter workspace allowed. And as you can see on the left-hand side, it's ghosted out because it's already running. However, you do get $600 worth of credits and you can create standard workspace, one, two, or more, entirely up to you. Okay, I think not sure what the limit is, but definitely you can have multiple standard workspaces. So here you can see this is selectable. Okay, and so you can choose your group name here. I'll just take the default there and your choice of cloud provider, okay, which we'll talk about a little bit in a moment, but today we're going to use AWS. Okay, and then you've got a bit more flexibility here in terms of region, for example. So I'm based in London, and I always say I look down the list here. So Europe West 2, probably a bit better for me. It's physically closer. Nothing else to configure there. Leave the advanced settings alone. It's be easier. And then just click at the bottom here, next. Okay. And then here you can see, again, at this point, you have the choice to configure your standard workspace and allocate appropriate CPUs and memory. This S00 is the smallest, and that's absolutely fine. I use that often instead of the free share tier if I need to do so, okay? But equally, you can edit this here using the edit button, okay? And that allows you to configure it. So you can choose more virtual CPUs, for example, more memory. And you can see here, it actually tells you how many credits it's going to burn through per hour. In this particular case, it's 0.28. I think if I choose Oregon or North Virginia, it will be 0.25, a little bit cheaper. So London seems to be slightly more expensive there, but that's okay. All right, and so you can see, I mean, that will keep running for a while. And over on the right-hand side, if you are sharp-eyed, you can see that currently I've got 42.96 credits still remaining. So that will keep me going for a while on this free account. And then all you need to do then, I'll disable this auto suspend, and then you just say create workspace. Okay, now I've already got a workspace running, standard workspace running, so I don't need this. All right, so I'll just go back here and back here. Okay, there we go. So in this particular case, you can see under this, yes, it's currently showing me my starter workspace shared tier, which is free for life. Okay, nothing to configure there. You get a certain level of resources with that, and you can leave that running, and you can continue to use that. There are obviously some limitations around this. So, for example, you are allowed up to 10 tables, for example. Okay, and 1 GB of compressed storage. And now if you're wondering, that's not very much. Trust me, I mean, for small scale tests and POCs, it's absolutely fine. But you can also see here that because I've got a standard tier running here, okay, I will click on this and select it. So this is something that is burning through my credits, okay, this workspace, and I took the opportunity to create a database here a little bit earlier on, right? So a little bit of flexibility, as you can see, you're not constrained to just the free shared tier. Obviously, that's great. Like I said, it doesn't burn through your credits. Free shared tier, free for life. You can use that as much as you like within the limitations that it provides, which okay is not super generous, but it's enough for small scale problems and small scale tests. I've opted for the standard tier today because I wanted to show that working as well. Okay, we've used the free shared tier in I think the last 3, 4, 5 webinars that we've done. So this is just something that's running. And then Yukti will share the link to the notebook. As I said before, you're welcome to load it unless you have a paid subscription to OpenAI. It's going to be a bit challenging for you to run it. Okay, so the way to do it and to load the notebook, and then we'll do the rest of the slides quickly. Okay, is just go here on the left nav, Data Studio. Okay, that's all you need. So let me click this. And at the top there, look for this browse, okay, which should be there for you anyway, unless you've selected some additional tabs, okay? So just click browse, and then on the right-hand side, you can see this big purple button, which says new notebook. And so if I click this, you can see I've got 2 options here. Either I create a new notebook from scratch, which is not what I want to do today, or I could import from file, which is the option you want to select, okay? So just select that option. Okay, let me get rid of the arrow there. And then here, just use your computer's navigation for your file system and just locate the notebook, okay? And then or just drag it here. You can choose shared or personal. I like to keep things in personal, although there's not a big difference there. You do need to give permission for people to use your shared, accessible by everyone in the organization. Okay, I mean, that's fine. If your organization is just you, that's fine too. Makes no difference. Okay, and then once you do that, this purple button here, import notebook, will be enabled, and that's it. You click it, it will load it, and it will look something like this. Okay, so this is the notebook. Using Apache Spark structured streaming with SingleStore notebooks. Okay, so we're going to look through this momentarily. All right, so we'll come back to this, but that's just to get you going. Okay, so you can load the notebook and you can follow along. Right, even if you can't run it, the output should be there, and I'll talk through that, and then I'll show you what we're going to do. All right, let me just head back to the slides, okay? And again, any questions there, don't worry, we'll come back to that. So Yukti will monitor that and she'll get back to me if any of you are having some difficulty there. But we've got a few slides, okay? Let me go through those. Let's have a look, keep an eye on the time. So it's 6:15 my time, so there we go. So let's say our standard 2 slides that we like to show about SingleStore, so a little bit about the history of the company and the product. So way back in 2011, MemSQL was the name, focused on in-memory OLTP, added column support, OLAP capability, 2015, and then it took a couple of years to rebrand the company. So once you've got OLAP and columnar store, That doesn't make sense to call yourself MemSQL anymore. You're doing more than just in-memory processing. So rebranded to SingleStore in 2020. Let me just click this. So we are a $100 million US ARR, annual recurring revenue company, and over 400 global customers as well, large and small, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. So we have some pedigree, as you can see, and we are not a company that was founded yesterday, but we've been around for some time. We have global customers using this technology in their production environments. So this concept of OLTP and OLAP, which I mentioned on the previous slide, we refer to it as universal storage here. Okay, so this single table type can handle both of those requirements. And we got a variety of technologies that we can work with. And remember, this is not an exhaustive list. So things like Kafka, for example, which I think Yukti has scheduled for the new year. Today, we're going to look a little bit at Spark streaming. And then you can also connect with things like S3, Hadoop HDFS as well. And here you can see this animation, which is showing this ingest in parallel at scale using pipelines, which we actually used in the webinar earlier this week. So we do work on all three major cloud providers, and today we're going to be using AWS. Stored data types, okay, so it is based very much, oops, trying to be too clever there. It's relational technology, so we do other things as well, geospatial, full text search, which we covered in the previous webinar, JSON support as well, time series, which again we've done in the past, and last but not least vectors, okay, which are gonna little bit today, although that's not really the point of the exercise. Nevertheless, we will be generating some vectors using OpenAI and storing those in SingleStore. And then just wrap it up here, applications, real-time analytics, and we do work with technologies such as Tableau. But if you want to build dashboards, I think you can easily do that using the Jupyter environment that we have, which we just saw a few moments ago. So if you're familiar with Matplotlib, Seaborn, Plotly, Plotly Express, Plotly Go, very easy to use those to create visualizations. Okay, let's move on. So this is again, not an exhaustive list, but some of the technologies that SingleStore happily works with. So you can use Apache Spark for some type of big data processing. And of course, it comes with some nice libraries such as MLlib, for example, for machine learning. Today, we're very much focused around the Python. Vector functions, not really going to use those today, but we do support Euclidean distance and dot product out of the box. And in case you want to write something yourself, perhaps something a little bit more exotic that is not supported by SingleStore, you can do that very easily using this code engine using WebAssembly. Okay, so I think the last article I had published on DZone was demonstrating how to use WebAssembly for sentiment analysis of Stack Overflow comments. And we were using this technology, this bit of code here, VADA, Valence Aware Dictionary and Sentiment Reasoner. OpenAI is just one of the LLMs that we happily work with, which we're going to be using today. And then in the financial world, well, generative AI has the potential, as it says there, to contribute 300 billion US dollars in additional value for banking and financial services. That sum of money is greater than the GDP of many countries around the world. So I was looking at those numbers a while back. So it's an enormous sum of money, and the potential there is huge as well. And there it's listing some of the areas where it may have an impact. For example, customer operations and support, in marketing, software engineering, risk and legal. And I think the slide on the graphic is from McKinsey on the right hand side. So just to give them credit. So it actually references the article at the bottom here. The economic potential of generative AI, the next productivity frontier, from McKinsey. All right. Okay. Just some of the organizations from the financial world that are using single store. A few of them we can't name. So here, for example, it says Tier 1 bank, but yeah, you can see DBS, Goldman Sachs. Um, let's have a look. RBC, that's I think Royal Bank of Canada. Millennium, BCP, I think that's in Portugal, and a few others that are mentioned there, but a few names that are hedge fund firm, it says there, and Fortune 100 bank. Okay, so because of, for various reasons, we cannot name those, but there are some well-known brands, well-known names in that list there. Okay, so when looking at Apache Spark and OpenAI, they are really complementary technologies. So if you think about Spark, then what is it? It is a distributed computing framework. It's been around for quite some time now. It's a unified engine as well. So I alluded to its machine learning capabilities a few moments ago, but does other things as well, you know, batch, interactive, and stream. And today we're going to be using its kind of streaming capabilities. So I just want to show you an example of how this might be useful in a particular problem that we're going to look at. In memory processing, so iterative computations, interactive analytics, it's fault tolerant. Okay, one of the things that we saw, you know, with the going back in time with the advent of Hadoop, for example, was this ability to, you know, have distributed capabilities, but some level of fault tolerance as well. Because in a distributed environment, you may lose bits of your cluster or bits of your environment. You know, the hardware may go down and so on. Yes, you can use off-the-shelf components, but it's helpful to have this capability as well because you never know when you may lose some part of your environment. And a rich ecosystem, wide range of libraries and tools. Okay, so very popular and very widely used technology. And if we do a kind of a head-to-head comparison, looking at some of the features of both of these technologies, well, Spark is a distributed computing framework. OpenAI, advanced AI models. Spark, wide range of functionalities for big data analytics. OpenAI, natural language understanding, generation, and processing. Spark is highly scalable, large data sets. OpenAI, models that can process vast data sets. Spark, high-level API in multiple languages. OpenAI, APIs or pre-trained models for download. And then with Spark, I mean, because it's been around for quite some time, there's a large active open source community around the Apache project. And naturally, Databricks offers that as a commercial offering as well. And then OpenAI, growing community of developers, very popular technology today. Everyone wants to be a prompt engineer. That's where the money is. And OpenAI is one of the leaders. Thanks to the ChatGPT, I think this has really, you know, this whole wave of generative AI has been their doing, I would say. It's, kudos to them. And then if we look at other technologies then and you know quickly compare Spark to something like scikit-learn, well, why wouldn't you use something like scikit-learn instead for doing some data processing um, with OpenAI? Well, the thing is that scikit-learn is really designed for single node in-memory computing, not designed for distributed computing. It's focused primarily on traditional machine learning, simple and consistent API. Yes, it has a large active community of users and developers. But if you want to do distributed processing, of which, of course, SingleStore is a distributed SQL database as well, then you really need to work, I think, with something that gives you those capabilities too, and the ability to handle data at scale, which you may require if you're doing, you know, vast quantities of processing. So that's one of the things that you may think about. And then in the financial world, if we look at this specific vertical, and we mentioned and showed the slide from McKinsey, and in detail, the graphic has got a lot more information than we have time to cover today. But I mean, two of the potential areas that you might consider using these technologies in a complementary way might be, say, fraud detection. Okay, so Spark would be awesome at processing and analyzing large volumes of transaction data to look for patterns. And then OpenAI could help with extract more context from unstructured data sources, such as text descriptions, customer communications, or transaction notes, for example. And then something else that might be useful is loan prediction, for example. Pre-processing and feature engineering on loan application data for building machine learning models to predict loan approval. And with OpenAI analyze additional unstructured data sources such as customer comments or loan application forms. So you can see here that, they are designed to do different things. In the past, I have tried several occasions to use a large language model. So, I think it's been OpenAI in both instances, actually, to see if it could do things that might be similar to what something like Spark or scikit-learn could do in the sense of kind of traditional machine learning. And I do have a slide here. So for fraud detection, for example, if we and don't I know this is you're going to need a kind of magnifier to don't worry about this too much, okay? So, but just wanted to compare several approaches as to how we might be able to do that using these technologies. And I've got a TLDR on the next slide, okay, which kind of summarizes all of this. But what I wanted to do is to look at some of the things: methodology, data handling, detection, accuracy, scalability, response time, expertise, adaptability, and so on. And then the traditional approach is how, in the world of finance and fraud detection, we would do this, perhaps very much with a human in the loop. I remember in the past, I used to get phone calls from my bank whenever there was a suspicious transaction. Some person would actually phone me up. We go through a verification process to confirm it really is me. I have to give them some details about myself. And then they would, check with me, did you use your credit card on such and such a day for such and such a transaction? And then I could go through them and check them and say, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. If it's a serious problem, then they put a stop immediately on the credit card. Typically, I get sent a form. I have to fill that in to confirm to the bank and sign it and confirm to them that, yes, this is something that has got nothing to do with me. It's a fraudulent transaction. It's happened a few times over the years. With traditional machine learning, things have got a lot better. Okay. It's very much the case that you've got awesome libraries available today, lots of skilled data scientists as well. They know how to use this technology, and it's widely used. Okay, very easy to deploy as well. And in the examples that I've tried doing this versus, say, an LLM, the results have been far better as well. It's a lot cheaper to run, and in the case of the LLM, I've kind of really pushed the technology in a direction where I think it's not really designed to go. Doing things like fraud detection and looking at transactional data, for example, maybe not the best way to use it. We talked about some of the applications in the previous slide and how it might help and might be something that's complementary to existing approaches. And therefore, I think sometimes you may overestimate the abilities or capabilities of a particular technology. So that's what I was trying to do, is simply look to see, would it be useful for some traditional kind of problems? And it turned out that, certainly based upon my testing, no, was the answer. I think definitively, at least for the time being, until these things get a little bit better. So just to summarize then, TLDR. Okay, so the traditional approach: predefined rules, statistical analysis, manual, okay, very much human in the loop kind of thing, effective for known fraud patterns, but less adaptable and scalable. Doesn't really scale very well. You need lots and lots of people to be kind of monitoring transactions and then kind of phoning up customers if there's a problem. High false positives, slower response times, right? And the world we live in, everything is very, very fast today. You can get on the web, you go shopping, you order stuff, do it immediately, the transaction goes through straight away. Traditional machine learning, learn from data, detecting new and unknown fraud patterns, higher accuracy, scalability, adaptability, real-time responses. Does require some data science expertise, but the thing is, we are spoiled for choice today. Okay, there are lots of great data scientists out there that you can hire, and they are very highly skilled, and be able to create the models that we need. Okay, so moderate implementation costs. Some costs are required, but it's not bad. A lot better than the traditional approach. Not quite as expensive as that approach. Okay, so and then the LLM, advanced natural language processing, contextual analysis to detect fraud patterns, highly adaptive, scalable. Here I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt and kind of looking into the future a little bit to say, well, this is what I think is possible. Requires significant expertise, so we do still need that skill and expertise today to be able to use these things effectively. Fine tuning, for example, is quite an art, but all the time this stuff is getting better and improving. And I think it's just a question of time before it's on a par with the existing approaches. The cost is already coming down significantly, and the applications that we're seeing of it as well, is just mushroomed. So I think future-wise, you're going ahead slightly. Yes, you still need that significant expertise today. I'm sure that will go down in the future. High initial cost, but offers low ongoing maintenance and advanced fraud detection. This is where I think we could see real benefits to this. Okay, so at that point in time, let me stop, okay, and just keep an eye on the time as well, so we are not running over too much. And let me just walk you through what I've done here. So what I've tried to do here is I've tried to combine Spark and OpenAI for a small problem, which I kind of thought in my mind might be a useful sort of application. And this is using Spark structured streaming as well. So here we go through a little bit of effort, just install Java. Okay, so in this case, I'm using OpenJDK 8. In your notebook, I think you might see that is 11. I've just been experimenting because the Conda have updated it. So it's actually version 23 now, I think, or something. And that was giving me errors because Spark, I mean, over time, obviously the technology evolves, but 8 excuse me. OpenJDK 8 and 11 should work just fine. And those are still very widely used. So your version, I think, will have 11. I tested with 11 earlier, and 8 is what I'm using here. So this should be perfect. We are using a slightly older version of OpenAI as well, and I'll explain the reason for that momentarily. Okay, so bear with me. And then we've got Natural Language Toolkit, PySpark as well, and then all the various imports that we need here. Here is where you get the OpenAI API key. Now, in case you're wondering, what is this get secret thing that it is mentioned there? Well, if you go to this, one of the nice things in our environment that we offer now, okay, just let me go to browse, okay, just show you this a moment, is this thing here called secrets, okay, very useful. Saves are great for demos because saves having to put the keys into the notebook. So if you just select this secrets, you can see here, I've actually got a couple of secrets saved. So I've got an OpenAI API key. I have something for IQAir. Okay, I'm playing around with Pinecone. I'm actually writing an article doing some comparison against that, plus MongoDB. Hopefully that blog post will be published soon. And then this is a password. Okay, so this is the password for the cluster that I'm using. Again, that's available in the environment, but it's just a lot easier to work with. And again, you'll see where this is used momentarily. Okay, there we go. So for some reason, this jumps around slightly. So there we go. We were here. Okay, so it picks up the OpenAI API key from the secrets vault. Okay, it's very convenient. Don't have to enter it in the notebook. Then we just make a couple of directories and we need to grab some files. Okay, so my magnifier is not going to show this particularly well, but essentially we're just getting a bunch of stuff from Maven. So we are getting the SingleStore JDBC client, the SingleStore Spark connector, a couple of other things as well, Spray JSON as well here for, it's useful for rendering. So those jar files are downloaded into this environment. They're saved in a directory. Okay, so as you can see, once you run this, it will tell you jar files downloaded successfully. Hopefully that will be okay for you as well. And then here we just create this Spark session. So it will point to the spark.jars, okay, load those in, and we give it an app name. And that's it. And as you can see, Spark is up and running, and it's obviously warning me there that can't find the native Hadoop library. That's okay. That's just a warning. Doesn't affect us in any way. And it's also telling us something about Spark R at the bottom there. So, but that's just fine. So Spark is up and running in this environment. Okay. And because we've got to the SingleStore JDBC connector and the Spark connector, what that means is that with the database that we have running in this environment, I can connect the two technologies together. So Spark can run, it can talk to the database, and it can store and retrieve data from the database as well. Now, what I've done here is just using this NLTK. Okay, this we are going to create some sentences. Okay, and I've got a data directory that I've created. And what I wanted to do was not just create random sentences, but something a little bit meaningful. Hence the little bit of code there to go through that process and have something useful. I've limited it simply here to 5 files that it's going to create. Each of those will have one sentence. Again, that these variables you can adjust. Okay, so for example, you could create 50 or 500. It's up to you, all right? And you could adjust the number of sentences per file as well. Okay, you could say more than one. Again, for simplicity reasons and just for the sake of brevity and time, I kept it to fairly low numbers so we could discuss those as we go along. So essentially, all that code does is it generates meaningful sentences. All right, and you'll see the application of that in just a moment. And then down here, we just take a look at what it's actually generated. So we've got 5 separate files with a TXT extension. And then here you can see its first one, it's got refrigerated storage for preservation. Here's something called with spirals. Okay, again, I think my magnifier is not going to show that, but I'll use the arrow here. Impossible to deny or disprove. Your output may be slightly different from mine, okay? In fact, it may be considerably different. I just realized that I reran this using JDK, OpenJDK 8. So you'll see something different, but that's fine. Okay, I mean, again, whatever you run, it'll generate something more meaningful for you. All right. So the idea here is to represent some data, or perhaps this could be representative of email messages, for example, that we want to do further analysis. Or these could be just documents. Say you're applying for a loan. Yes, these are super short. You can increase the volume of data that you're storing. It's absolutely fine. But again, just to keep things super simple, just to show you that we are getting some representative, meaningful text here rather than just random words, so that this could be an example of something from the real world. All we're doing then is just we create our database here. Okay, so we drop the database if it exists, we create it. Okay, so this is required in the standard environment. In the free tier, you wouldn't need to do this because you get a free sort of database as part of the compute as well. But here, that's the reason I opted to do this, because again, just to show you that this can be done within the notebook as well. And then we simply create a table then just to store the value, okay, which is the text that you saw just above. We're interested in the file name itself. Again, that's the document, okay? So perhaps if these documents are being stored in a database system, we might wish to have all of the information associated with them. So imagine, for example, if you have loan applications, we would be interested in the entire loan document, perhaps the file name as well. Maybe if it's a scan document, there would be additional information. Maybe, there's customer details that we could store along with that as well, for example. And then here we've got vector embeddings as well, which we are generating based upon the text value. Okay. Just below here, we ensure that we are connected to the database. Okay, so standard stuff here, SQL Alchemy, and this connection underscore URL, a little bit of magic there that actually provides the connection to the database. And we need to ensure at the top here that we do have that selected. Okay, so just above here, you can see there's a action required just to warn us that please ensure that you have selected from up above, and you recall the database we collected was, sorry, the created was Spark demo. Okay. We need to pick up a little bit of information so that Spark has the necessary credentials to be able to talk to our database as well. Okay. And so here we are literally just doing that. We get the get secret, okay, the password, which I showed you a little bit earlier. We pick up the URL for the host, the port, and then for the cluster details, this is the host plus colon plus port. And then once we have that, here's the configuration that we provide to Spark to tell it where this endpoint is that we want to connect to. I mean, it's in the same environment here, okay? It's local, but it still needs that information. At the moment, we don't have a simplified way to do this similar to this, for example. It'd be great to have a single sort of connection like this that the Spark connector could use, but at the moment, that's not available. So a couple of lines of code will provide that. Again, we just retrieve our OpenAI key here, okay, from the environment. And then here, this little bit of code is just generating embeddings based upon the text. Okay. And we are using the text embedding 3 small just to keep costs down. That's the engine for OpenAI. Now, the reason for using 0.28 of OpenAI is that I found because there is multi-threading going on within this environment, unfortunately, it causes some issues with this code, with this function. So I need to look into that and investigate that further to see what the resolution for that is. Because as it's running, there is some additional things going on behind the scenes. And unfortunately, it seems to cause some issues with the latest versions of OpenAI, the libraries. So 0.28 works for sure. I appreciate it's a little bit out of date, but still, it still works. So for this kind of problem, you can still utilize it. And we register this UDF because this is a Spark UDF. Okay, we register this here. Okay. And I think that's the issue. There's some interaction between OpenAI and the Spark environment, which, like I said, it's a little bit difficult to debug at the moment. I'm not quite sure what the issue is, but I will investigate and see if I can fix that. And then last but not least, here is we set up the streaming. So in this particular case, we just, it's read stream. Okay. We are just reading. The format is text. We give it the path for where those files reside. Okay. And then we apply the embeddings. And then we write each batch of data to SingleStore. Okay. So this is where you see the, I think down here somewhere for each batch. There we go. So what this is essentially doing in this particular example, Spark Streaming is configured to check the particular directory. Is there anything in that directory? Yes, there are some files. Okay, process each file one by one, call the function that calls OpenAI to generate the embedding, take the embedding as well as the text and store it in SingleStore, okay, the table that we created a little bit earlier on. And then when you get to the end, stop, okay? So this is what is happening at the end here, query.stop. Now, what I could do is, because the streaming can be configured in such a way that if there is no data, you could still have Spark running and then, polling, checking that location, has new data arrived? Okay, is there anything new there that hasn't been processed? In this particular case, I've decided to stop it because I don't have an external source that I'm using to stream this data. But think about, say, if we've got some data arriving that's like email messages, for example, or sort of transactional data maybe. We would like to do some analysis of that. So as the data arrive, we store not only the original data, but it's kind of vector embedding equivalent into SingleStore. And Spark will happily sit there and keep processing. And it will, once the data have been processed, it will wait. New data arrive, it will process that and again connect to the SingleStore and write that into the database. So in this particular case, I've opted just to stop. Once all the data have been read, just don't do any more, just stop. Okay. but that can be configured again. Could be very useful. And then finally, we just take a look. What is that we've actually stored? And this is the reason for keeping it fairly small. You can see I have the original text, okay, the name of the file that processed, and here's the vector embedding that was created using OpenAI. And then finally, we just kill Spark itself there and stop it gracefully rather than just terminating the environment. So key points here. You can see that Spark and OpenAI complementary technologies. In this particular example, I've used its streaming capability, fairly easy to set up, as you can see. The amount of code is not significant. The Spark streaming is well documented as well. So it's fairly straightforward to get that working. The challenge, as I said before, is that unfortunately, because of some issues, I think it's multi-threading or something, there is some conflict between the Spark environment and the libraries from OpenAI. And this is for the latest versions of OpenAI, hence the reason for using the earlier 0.28 version. I will look into that, like I said, and investigate it and see if I can update and fix that. But it works out of the box using this older version. I mean, that's absolutely fine. So there is an application that you can think, well, this might be useful where we are receiving some streaming data from an external source. Maybe it's some transactional data, perhaps it's forms, customer data, or something else that we need to process. Spark will happily process that for you. And at the same time, as we are processing that and storing it in the SingleStore, for example, and remember, we could do other things as well. In this particular case, aside from just generating the vector embeddings, it's not doing anything else. But there's nothing to stop you from doing additional processing of that data, for example. And I generated some fictitious data, some sentences, and a couple of files just to illustrate the point, which you can see have been stored correctly inside the database system. And you can happily extend this by increasing the number of files that it's generating, increasing the number of sentences to make that much more substantial. Obviously, the cost is going to go up as well using OpenAI, and maybe an open source free solution could be useful here. But again, I'm not sure how that would interact in terms of the threading and working with the Spark libraries. It's, again, something that would need to be checked and investigated. Okay. Let's go back and just wrap up. Okay, so summary, I think that don't think of these as competing technologies. Rather, they are complementary. They are useful for different problems. And I think that will always be the case. I don't see a particularly strong overlap between these technologies, but I think they serve a very useful purpose. They can be combined to solve some business problem. So you saw one possibility today. I'm sure there are others that you can think of as well in some of the environments that you're working with. In case you are interested, SingleStore has a Go Live acceleration program. Okay, so you can work with us if there is some particular project or application that you have in mind, maybe a proof of concept that you'd like to test SingleStore. We have my colleagues in the SE team, for example, are hugely skilled in all aspects of SingleStore, as well as LLMs, Spark, and associated technologies. So it's something that we can handhold and walk with you through this process to ensure that you are successful. The customary we are hiring slide. So singlestore.com/careers/jobs. Just look at those if you are interested in the possibility of working for us. That's worth monitoring that and keeping your eyes on that page. They do post vacancies globally. And then my favorite quote, which I always use, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, from Arthur C. Clarke. And with that, let me stop there at that point and thank you for your time and attention. And fortunately, I finished early today. So, Yukti, any questions, please? I will leave it to you to help me
Yeah, we
today.
actually have a lot of questions. So
Okay.
thanks everyone for sticking till the end. And Akmal, you can see the questions, right? So feel free to pick them up.
Okay, my poor eyes. So,
Oh, it's okay. Do you want me to read them out for
no,
you?
it's okay. It's okay. I'll do it. Okay, there we
All
go.
right. Okay. So just as like while Akmal is picking up the questions,
Yeah.
we are like now starting the Q&A session. So this will be there and like for 10 minutes. So we'll try to
Yeah, yeah,
answer all the questions. But if not, we will follow up with you. And you can always email us at team@singlestore.com and we'll get the relevant folks
yeah.
to answer the questions for you. So, Akmal, did you find any question that
Yes,
is
yes. So, Ashish has got a question. So he says, please share this video recording as on demand for further reference. Thanks in advance. Yes, indeed. So Yukti will send up what's called an FUP, follow up mail, something like that. Yeah. Which will contain a link to the recording. And I think, Yukti, you're going to include the link to there's an associated article plus the GitHub notebook, which, as I said before, I tested early today. One of the things that always surprises me, and I tell other people to do this, sometimes I forget to do it myself, is it is very important to pin versions of libraries, right? With Conda, for a long time, it was downloading version 8. And I just let that pass. I should have pinned the version specifically. Earlier today, I tested the notebook and it's version 23. And that version 23 of Java OpenJDK is causing some problems for me in my environment. So I thought I have to roll back, go back. So I tested 11, that works fine, and tested 8, that works fine. And so there may be some additional small changes to the notebook, but you have a working version today. Mario says, can we use vector data for LLMs and time series for predictions? Absolutely, Mario. So one of the examples that I did a little while back, actually, we have it on YouTube. There is a video that I recorded for a demo that I was supposed to do at Big Data London. I think it was in September sometime. Unfortunately, there were some issues at the conference, but I recorded it subsequently. So there is like a stock ticker data. Okay, it's a Kafka feed. It made up. Okay, it's a made up data that's arriving, and we're using a pipeline to connect to Kafka and then ingesting that data into SingleStore. So it's fictitious data, but represents, stocks, the closing price, opening price, high, low, volume, and so on. And that data is streaming in steadily into SingleStore. And what I did then was make use of OpenAI's Whisper, for example, to actually ask questions. So I am speaking to my computer. It's picking up my voice, it's transcribing it into an MP3 file, and then it's extracting the sentences from that, and then we use the excuse me, LangChain's SQL database toolkit, which essentially allows you to ask natural language questions. Okay. And then it's using OpenAI behind the scenes to connect to the database, make those inquiries, returns the result back to the Python program, which uses the speech synthesizer to, say the result back to me, which is pretty awesome. It's a very tinny voice that it uses. Okay. It reminds me of, that famous physicist. The name escapes me for the moment, but he was in a wheelchair. He was a professor at Cambridge. I can see his face now, but his name is just not coming to me right now. But it's like that, and so there you can see it's time series data. Okay, it's ticker data. Okay, so over time you can analyze it to see stock price, how it varies, for example. And at the same time, we are using an LLM as well, and we are using vector capability behind the scenes too, right? So that's possible too. So that's one application, okay, that I can think of off the top of my head that I know works. If you wish, Yuki, I can give you the link to the YouTube video, and we can share that, okay? And I think there's some resources as well that go with that. There's an article and a Python, a Jupyter notebook that demonstrates that as well. So that's the two aspects of that in terms of the tick data plus the separate code that's required to run the Python and the speech synthesis. Yes, so Ashish has got a question. How to design, build effective and better retrieval augmented generation RAG systems or model? I think look on Twitter, or X as it's called these days. Goodness me, I see enormous amounts of posts, people sharing lots of awesome open source projects. Everything today seems to be about agents. That seems to be the next big thing. It seems to be the hot technology. And the I think what's the other thing? This the MCP. Um, what's it? Cohere and Anthropic. I forget which of the. It is recent stuff. Okay, it's my brain is full. So the agents, I think, is the way to go. That can be something that I tested very recently, done on a very small scale. So, for example, I know nothing about blockchain, but what I did was I wrote two small agents. One agent, I said, you're an expert in blockchain. And then the other agent, I said, okay, you are an expert in investment strategies for the stock market. And then I gave the first agent, the blockchain agent, some information about blockchains, and it analyzes this kind of PDF file, and then it provides the information to the second agent, which then it takes that and then makes some recommendations as to where I might wish to invest my money if I were interested in the stock market. So that's a super simple example, but I've seen much more complex examples being built. As far as RAG is concerned, yes, I mean, that's still very easy to do. So essentially, if you think about it, the LLM's memory is only up to a certain point in time. That's what it's been trained on. After that point in time, more has happened in the real world, and therefore you're typically augmenting its knowledge with something specific to you. And the care and attention you need there is be careful about sensitive data. Also, have it run within your own environment. And I think Yukti's actually got something in the pipeline where we are talking about Ollama again in the new year, where we show how you can install something just locally on a laptop in your environment. It's behind your firewall. You can run the LLM, you can interrogate, you can do queries and things, and nothing kind of goes outside of that environment. And that's a great way to use this technology simply to augment what's already there. So the LLM, as I said before, its knowledge only goes up to a certain point. You ask it questions about current events, it may not know. I know some LLMs are kind of much more dynamic. If you look at Gemini, for example, and even OpenAI, ChatGPT, you'll see occasionally you ask a question and then it tells you that it's searching the internet for answers. So it's actually going out beyond what its knowledge was to try to find answers for you. So that can work really well. And when once you have the information, converting it into vectors is very simple. SingleStore has had that capability since 2017. It's very simple and straightforward. I mean, what is it? A vector is just an array of numbers, right? It may have a high number of dimensions. 1536, for example, if you use OpenAI on one of their models, might be smaller if you use some other model, might be bigger if you use some other model. Okay, it just depends. So very straightforward and easy to do. My colleague Pavan, who's actually based in India, and he's an influencer on LinkedIn, he's written some awesome content on some of the, if you go to some of these medium.com, there are a range of kind of spaces there, if you like, or journals or online sort of journals where people write content. So he's done a whole bunch of that. And just check out his stuff on LinkedIn as well. He posts regularly. The guy has got thousands of followers. So people obviously love reading his stuff. So check that out. Okay, there we go. Yes. Let's have a look. So anonymous attendee, why 1536? Because we are using OpenAI, okay? And that particular model creates vector embeddings that are 1536 dimensions in length, okay? So that's the reason for that. You don't have to use that, okay? So if you are using, say, another LLM provider, you need to check to see what, if you're using its ability to convert, say, text into vectors, how many dimensions does it create? It's probably a good idea to set up a variable to do that, but 1536 is the default for that particular model for OpenAI. Okay, so that's the reason for that. Mario, you have a question for streaming. Can we use something similar to Airflow? Oh, good question. SingleStore happily integrates with Airflow. One of the articles I wrote a while back actually shows how to do that, but I had to use the MySQL drivers in order to do that. I think at the moment, from memory, there still isn't a dedicated driver just for SingleStore, but the MySQL one will happily work. You could set that up. I again demonstrated a simple example where you set up the you know, the configuration, the tables, and it does the processing just fine. So that seems to work well. So yes, you could potentially use something like that. Yep, that could be part of the architecture if that's a technology that you're already using. But then you need to find some way of getting the data out and being able to um, well, if it's already in the database, it won't be a problem. But how you need to think about the streaming kind of aspect of that. How is that going in? And then what would you do to process that? In addition, you need to set up the rules, the bit of Python code, for example, that process that, and so on. But it's probably doable, I would say. Yeah. Let's see. How can sensitive data be secured in this architecture, particularly when generating embeddings through external APIs like OpenAI? Great question. Thank you very much for that. So the issue here is that in cloud-based environments, you try to utilize the capabilities of the cloud provider. Okay, so using things like VPC and having private link, these kind of capabilities. So with Microsoft, for example, I think they have a very strong relationship with OpenAI. If you look at AWS, again, they have a very strong relationship with some of the providers. They've invested heavily as well in one or two of them. And that is something that can run entirely within that environment. If that's even not enough for you and you're concerned about even that level, that you don't get the level of protection, think about the case where you are running the LLM and generating the embeddings locally behind your firewall. You can install something like Ollama, for example, um, which we've demoed a few times before on a small scale again, but I have that purely within my environment on my laptop, running behind my firewall. The only thing I need to do is just download the appropriate models. And once I've done that, it's a one-time operation. Some of the models can be quite large. So for example, Llama 2, I think it was, it's like over 3.5 gigabytes in size. And if you plan to download a few of those, you can see that that's going to cause a little bit of, you're going to take up some network bandwidth, bringing those models down. But once you have them locally, that's it. I mean, you don't have to do it again unless you want to get an updated model or something. So one solution there is to look at technologies such as Ollama, for example, or virtual LLM, something like that, where you configure and set up a server behind your firewall in your local environment, process the data, generate the embeddings, store them as well. And even with SingleStore, for example, we have customers that do not run in the cloud. There are legal requirements by some financial institutions, for example, they are obliged not to run stuff in the cloud, for example. Therefore, they have on-prem installations. And again, that's in their environment behind their firewall. And again, there's nothing to preclude them from running these LLMs, in the same environment and generating these embeddings, storing them in SingleStore, and nothing goes outside, right? Nothing goes to the cloud. So that's the solution there. Valentine, you are my golden ghost. Oh, thank you very much. So, we're kind of getting to the point in time where, it's time to say goodbye and wish you all a happy, I've seen Festivus being mentioned or something like that. I mean, Christmas, okay? If you don't celebrate it, okay, it's seasonal greetings, okay, something like that. So there we go. Okay, a couple more questions. Let's just have a look. Okay, let's just do a couple more, okay, and then we'll end it there. So another question here. Um, Danvantari, forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Are there any specific configurations for SingleStore's vector data type to improve performance for semantic search? Great question. Yes, so SingleStore has a dedicated vector type now, which we used in the example today, but there is a lot of tuning potential. In fact, just today, I've been sitting in on a beta course that's being developed by our training team, where they go through in detail a lot of the tuning capabilities, the various parameters that are available, and the benefits and the trade-offs that they provide. Currently, in terms of indexing, for example, we provide this auto capability that will improve with time. But if there's more specific tuning that you want to do, there are various parameters available, and specifically around ANN indexing, for example. That's useful because if you think about it, when you've got vast quantities of data that you want to analyze, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of vectors, you may be more happy to accept a result that is not perfect, in the sense that it's not 100%. Okay, it might be give you sort of 80%, 90% accuracy. That may be sufficient for some business decision that you need to make, because there is some time pressure. Okay, there may be some threat or opportunity that you're working with, and therefore it gives you the opportunity to work with vast quantities of data at speed, but there's some tuning around that in terms of configuring it and assessing that, based upon your requirements, what is the best option for you, versus not using an index where the answer may be 100% accurate, but it may take a little bit of time to get to retrieve. I think the documentation contains more details about the specific options, some of the trade-offs. But if you are interested in the training, I think, as I said before, it's currently in beta. My colleague Lena, who's working on that and building that content out, I think that will be available sometime next year, hopefully early next year, first quarter maybe. But yes, that's a great question. There's a lot to think about around that. And today, again, because of time pressures, we didn't have the opportunity to do that. Ranga, thank you for all these sessions. Keep learning a lot from. Oh, thank you very much. So, just happy that we can benefit you. And again, thank you for your time attending these sessions. We know your time is valuable. Ollama with SingleStore on-prem from Anonymous. Is there capacity to use the local NVIDIA GPU? Great question. I haven't thought about that. The GPU support, I think, is something that it can check for. My laptop, I mean, I have a Mac and it's got GPU support in there, but the GPU can't be used by Ollama. I tend to use a virtual machine as well, VMware Fusion, simply because it avoids me having to mess up my laptop environment, which leaves it unusable sometimes. So just running things inside a virtual machine makes things a lot simpler. But I would just check the Ollama documentation, see what is configurable. They are generally very good. The community around the technology there is also extremely good, very helpful. Much like Spark, much like OpenAI, you will see there are discussion forums. So I'd strongly recommend just go there and ask the question and get some help from there, specifically around what you're looking for. So SingleStore on-prem, definitely, that's a plus. Ollama, definitely you can install it. In terms of the GPU support, off the top of my head, I can't give you an answer. Again, I will go away and read up and find the answer myself as well. Okay, there we go. Yeah, let's just try it. Okay, thank you very much, Robert. Thank you for your comments there. The demo is very educational. Thanks for all the effort you put into creating them. Again, appreciate that. Thank you, sir. So, anonymous attendee, in the future Zoom session, can SingleStore organizer allow participants to save the chat? That, I think, is a question for you, Yukti. Zoom is your domain. You are the expert. So there we go. Okay. So Anonymous says Ollama can use NVIDIA GPU local. Thank you very much for that. That's great to know. It's more directed towards using it in addition SingleStore combined. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Okay, and I think with that, we are pretty much at the end. So we're 10 minutes over again. So thank you for all the questions. And I think it remains for me, given that this is the last webinar of the year for us, and I think both Yukti and myself could do with the time off, and we wish you all a very happy seasonal greetings and have a restive and peaceful time over the next couple of weeks. We will be back in the new year. I think Yukti's got an awesome program for more webinars. You'll be seeing a lot of other faces as well, not just mine. So my colleague Alex, I think, will be doing some, and our boss Maduka, I'm sure he'll be keen to do some sessions as well as the awesome SE team, who always have lots of interesting things to talk about. And so with that, Yukti, I will hand back to you then.
All right, so thank you so much for doing this webinar, Akmal, and thanks everyone for joining us because given it's very late at night for like Indian folks, it's almost 1 a.m. and we really appreciate because I know a lot of folks actually tune in from India. So thanks for that. And Akmal, thank you so much because Akmal is actually on paid time off and he's still doing these webinars for us. So thanks for that. And this is the last webinar of this year, and the webinar that we scheduled for the 20th, it's going to be rescheduled, I think in like second or third week in January. So stay tuned for that, and we'll have an email over to you, like whosoever has registered, like about the rescheduling. So, just like be on the lookout if you're interested in attending that session. It's about accelerating your MongoDB apps. Like if you have any issues, like with your data on Mongo, so and whatever it is, like if we can discuss how to address those concerns during that session. So, Akmal, I believe you will be doing that webinar. So, we can all use a break now. So, I think thanks everyone for this amazing year and whosoever has actually attended the sessions from the beginning. We're really thankful to everyone and have a great rest of the day and happy holidays, everyone. Bye.